I would like to start by saying that white American women are the most beautiful women ever created. They are a mixture of various, mostly Nordic European peoples, but the beauty that you find in women like Katy Perry, Avril Lavigne, what's the name? The Paramore singer. I don't know her name, but whatever. These are the most beautiful women ever created. But I will continue on giving my view on America, and my idea is that America is made in the image of God, and that God is a conflicting dialectical being of self-negation and self-understanding and self-love and self-hatred. It's very complex. So America dominates the whole world culturally, politically, economically, and America contains within itself most, if not all, contradictions. And that's why they are the main actors of world history. And Hegel teaches us that reason, the work of the world spirit, must be sought and understood within history. It is the realm of violence, the realm of negation, but also the realm of progress. And we should accept this process as being the manifestation of God and of God's providence within history. And we should intellectually understand what is at work in the historical process. So America is a land of madness, of violence, of beauty, of faith, of politics. It is the lands of blacks, Hispanics, Indians, and whites, and other minorities. So it's the land of the totality, which is in conflict with itself and which is trying desperately to solve the contradictions which are inherent in its being. Uh, God is an artist, and he tries to extract beauty out of suffering. God is an alchemist. He makes his creatures suffer, and from this suffering, which was expressed by Philip K. Dick's view of the cosmos aiming at beauty, God makes his creatures suffer because it is the only way to produce beauty. So he's kind of a psychopath and an artist at the same time. And Nietzsche understood that very well. So, just an example, the suffering of blacks in America, the tragic and horrifying history of blacks in America has produced in modern pop culture magnificent artists, and there are deep divine truths expressed in modern black or Afro-American music. And um, uh, my purpose with this channel is to show you that God is made manifest as an absolute spirit in the realm of culture and modern pop culture. And I can think of artists just such as Lil Wayne with his song Mirror, or 50 Cent with Many Men. I can think of Prodigy with his Hegelian dialectic. And I have an anecdote. In 2018, around the month of June, I was in a spiritual process, and I had just discovered Hegel a few months earlier. And in my view, Hegel was the European thinker, the emperor of Europe, the king of Europe, the greatest thinker Europe ever produced. But then I realized that there was this Afro-American hip hop artist, Prodigy, who made an album titled Hegelian Dialectics. And I wonder, how could Hegelian dialectics be found in the midst of Afro-American culture? And this is when I realized that Hegel was not a European thinker. He was only contingently or accidentally European, but he was a universal thinker, and that all cultures, all spiritual products could be found within Hegel's system. And that was a shocking revelation to me, but yeah. I could name a few American authors which have had a profound influence upon me. Steinbeck taught me the value of beauty through suffering, and it was my first artistic experience through my school education as an empirical individual. I had never found any interest in reading books, and the first book which really shook me was a book by Steinbeck. and he was a great author. Hemingway taught me the beauty and the overwhelming, terrifying and beautiful aspect of life. Its violence and its overwhelming sublimity. This sublime aspect of life is found in the writings of Hemingway. To appreciate life in the midst of natural violence and overwhelming powers of nature. It's a very profound writer. I also loved Melville because Moby Dick. I've not read the novel, but I know Captain Ahab, who wonders, is it God who controls the heartbeats of my heart? Is it God who is in control of everything? And I believe that God is in control of everything. And the quest for the white whale for Moby Dick is a symbolic quest for the search of the absolute, and this novel is beautiful. I also, in 2017, I discovered Emerson, and I knew of Henry David Thoreau, and I was deeply impressed by their transcendentalist spiritual views. So the Americans are thought to be a very pragmatic, very turned toward business and making money and neglecting anything, with this mixture of practical activity in the week and blind faith on Sunday. But they have also very deep and profound and speculative thinkers, and who have a spiritual view of God and of nature and of the world. And Emerson is one of them. Then I discovered Stoddard and Madison Grant. I talked about them in my previous video. Then I discovered the Rockwell. I always found that the Lincoln Rockwell, I found it kind of a clown figure, but he was terrifying and kind of a joke figure, but he was a moment in the process of my development, and some of the things he said were partly true and helped understand the modern world. And then there's William Pierce, who had a sublime cosmotheist view, but what he did not understand is that his own spiritual view included within itself the very negation of the white race, because when you adopt a cosmotheist view, namely that the whole is the creator and man is one mode of the consciousness of the creator, then blacks and Jews and non-whites of all sorts are within the creator, and they are the manifestation of the will of the creator, and you have to understand and accept them as being part of the whole process. And that Pierce, in spite of the sublime aspect of his cosmotheist doctrine, he did not understand. And yeah. And then America is the land of Jared Taylor, which is a noble and politically acceptable way of trying to solve the contradictions. And the dialectical irony of the white nationalist movement is that in the early parts of the 20th century and the 19th century, the Irish and the Italians and the Eastern whites were hated by the WASP majority. And today, in a dialectical attempt to transcend the contradictions, whites, Italians, and Eastern Europeans are all considered white. So it's a dialectical progress of spirit, which by furthering and growing and progressing is incorporating contradictions within itself. And today the white movement accepts within itself those that it had rejected previously, and this is the whole process of spirit, to incorporate within itself more and more negations and contradictions, and to become a totality including of all realities. America is also the land of Andrew Anglin, David Duke, Richard Spencer, which are figures of consciousness that one would rather not think about, but they are part of the process of spirit coming conscious of itself, and they must be integrated and accepted as a necessary moment in the self-realization of spirit, and it is part of the story. Like Malcolm X and the black nationalists, they are also a dialectical reaction against the white dominance, and all these figures of consciousness must be conceptually integrated within a global picture of the whole history of America, because, as Hegel says, the truth is the whole in the totality of its development. And then America is not mostly considered as a country of spiritual thinker, but I would just like to mention Greg Johnson, the white nationalist author, and he made a book about an analysis of Hollywood movies, and his view is that Hollywood movies are some sort of inverted white nationalist dream, and it's a white nationalist nightmare because um, it doesn't understand that Hollywood projects his own ideology in an inverted way. So it's he's looking at a part of himself through Hollywood movies, and it is God's mirror. Is that you have to look at yourself through the mediation of how the other sees you, and this is how you acquire your truth. But that's another story. Uh, America produced Glenn Alexander Maggie, who is one of the finest, most intelligent interpreter of Hegel. And his book, Hegel and the Hermetic Tradition, is one of the most spiritual, enlightening books ever written on Hegel, and he deserves credit for that. Philip K. Dick and Neil Walsh are speculative thinkers. They had an experience of God, and they made God manifest in their writings. So America produced in the second half of the 20th century a self-revelation of God, and it must be credited for that. And then there's Ron Paul, and he's the figure of consciousness which represents the old aristocratic Republican who values virtue, civic virtue, and has its being in the Constitution. It's a Hegelian moment where the singular consciousness knows itself in the objective manifestation of its own spirit. And Ron Paul is the kind of man who has his entire being in the Constitution, and he's one with the American Constitution, and he's the living manifestation of American liberty, and he's worthy of credit for that. Um, America is the land of New Age spirituality and ruthless atheism, of fanatical Christianity and the revival of paganism. So it contains within itself many religious contradictions. And yeah, I will just end by saying that America is the country of modern pop culture. It influences the entire world, and the view of this channel, Cultural Hegelianism, is that absolute spirit is made manifest to himself in modern pop culture. So America is the vehicle of the spread of a worldwide culture which manifests God to himself through music, Hollywood movies, video games, and stuff like that. And finally, America invented the internet, which was at first a military weapon. The internet is a product of war, or the threat of war, but it produced the outburst of liberty and the possibility of a growing global consciousness, which is the mind of God becoming conscious of himself. And we owe an eternal, grateful gift given by God to America and given back to God by America. It is the internet which enable the self-consciousness of God, and we must be thankful for that to America.